Great conversations happen here. Chatterbinge.
It is the story of two assistant U.S. attorneys racing to lock up a dangerous Al-Qaeda terrorist before he's set free in a riveting true crime story. The new book is Race Against Terror, Chasing an Al-Qaeda Killer at the Dawn of the Forever War. He is a #1 New York Times best-selling author and the award-winning lead Washington, D.C. anchor and chief correspondent for CNN. It is great to say hello to Jake Tapper. Jake, welcome to Chatterbinge.
Thank you, Ed. It's a pleasure.
This book is nonfiction, but the pacing of this book and a very artful use of literary crescendo makes this feel like a thriller, very much akin to the writings of Mark Greaney and even Mark Cameron. So, Jake, let's set things up if we can. If you would, tell us a bit about Race Against Terror and Spin Ghoul.
Well, first of all, thank you for your praise of the pacing of the book. I tried to take some of the lessons I learned from novels I've written, from thrillers I've written, and apply them to this nonfiction true story. Nonfiction sometimes reads like homework. And I didn't want it to read like that. It's such an exciting story. When I heard about it, I wanted people to feel the excitement that I felt when I first heard about it. It's about a guy named Spin Ghoul, an Al-Qaeda terrorist, who gets picked up by the Italians during the Arab Spring in 2011. He claims that he has killed Americans in Afghanistan and tried to blow up the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria. The Italians call the Americans and say, "Do you want to talk to him? Have you heard of this guy?" They have heard of him. The Americans go over, and he confesses. He tells them his whole story. Then the Italians say to the Americans, "Great, take him. We don't want him. He hasn't done anything to us." But the Americans can't just take him. They have to prove a case against him. It's the Obama years. They're not sending detainees, accused terrorists to Gitmo anymore. They have to prove a case in a federal court of law. So there is a race. Before the Italians put him in a refugee camp from which he will easily escape, and then go and kill as many Americans as he can, which is his life's goal, the American prosecutors have to do some sleuthing. They have to do detective work and track down fingerprint evidence and track down witness testimony and build a criminal case against him. And when I first heard this story from one of the assistant U.S. attorneys, it was so interesting to me because I love that stuff from police procedurals on TV. I love CSI and Law and Order and those shows. I love proving a case against a bad guy. And that's what these guys did. These guys and gals did. And it was just such an interesting story to learn about. And I'm glad people think it's fun to read.
It's a very interesting snapshot of that period of time as well. That period between 2011 and 2015, when there was fear over bringing a terrorism suspect to be tried here in the United States, especially in Manhattan, which then evoked outspoken angst from both ends of the political spectrum. But then, fast forward years later, President Trump announces he's bringing a terror suspect to Virginia, one of the terrorists behind the Abbey Gate bombing. And the reaction is like, eh. So, Jake, why has that changed?
It's such a great question. And you're right. I mean, it was researching the book and going back to 2011, 2012. Obama is trying to bring foreign terrorists to the U.S. for criminal prosecution. And there is such outrage, such fear. People still terrorized 10 years after 9/11. And to this day, Ed, only one Gitmo detainee has ever been tried in a criminal court in the U.S. And Spin Ghoul, the guy in my book, he remains the only foreign terrorist tried in a U.S. criminal court for killing U.S. service members in a war zone. Although, as you note, Trump is trying to do the second, this guy Jafar from the Abbey Gate bombing. What's changed? The only thing I can think of is time. The only thing I can think of is experience, where people are now just more used to the threat of terrorism. Also, perhaps there's an only Nixon can go to China aspect to this. Maybe if Kamala Harris had announced as president that she was going to bring a terrorist to the U.S. for prosecution, maybe there would have been a more hue and outcry. But Trump announced it in his joint address to Congress earlier this year, and nobody said anything.
Yeah.
And this guy Jafar is sitting in a cell in Virginia, probably no more than 5 miles from where I'm sitting, and nobody seems particularly scared. So I guess maybe people have just learned the lesson. These are horrible people, evil people, but they're not superhuman.
Spingool, he himself was difficult, as you point out in the book, in his attempts to obstruct any and all proceedings. Page 227 of Race of Terror, you describe how in May of 2016, after frequent absences from hearings, he's ordered brought to court. The marshals had to use force to extract him that day from his cell. He rips off his clothes in the van. He shows up in court in his underwear and he screams all day. It's behavior like that that led Judge Brian Cogan a year earlier to state that narcissism is not mental incompetence. I love that. So, Jake, take me a bit deeper into this narcissism and the difficulties that Spingool presented.
So the big debate when it comes to his mental state is, was he actually insane? Was he fit and competent to stand trial? Or was he legitimately crazy? And what was being argued by the prosecution was that Spingool was completely sane, and he was doing this to be as difficult as possible because he no longer could annoy Americans with armaments and attacks. He no longer could kill Americans. He no longer could conspire against Americans. All he could do was be as difficult as possible. And actually, prosecutors have a term for it. They call it the jihad of annoyance. It is what terrorists do when they have no other repercussion other than to be difficult. That's it. That's their only way to fight the West. And ultimately, Judge Cogan was faced with that decision. Is this person competent to stand trial or not? And if he is competent, what is he doing here? And as you note, Cogan was predisposed to think that this was an act. It was not real.
Yeah. As a journalist, especially as a broadcast journalist, where an economy of words needs to be even more economical than an 86 Yugo, and you are limited to the amount of minutes in the A block or whatever it is. How liberating is it as a writer, Jake, to have the luxury to not only report a story, but tell that story in the way you have here in the format of a book?
It's very liberating because obviously in television or daily journalism, you can only go so deep and so far. But also the temptation, you have to watch it, because just because you can write a 200,000 word book doesn't mean you should write a 200,000 word book. And that's one of the lessons I've learned as a writer. This is my 8th book. One of the lessons I've learned as a writer is what Faulkner called killing your darlings. That sometimes to serve the greater service of the plot and propelling a reader through your book, sometimes you have to get rid of chapters, sometimes you have to get rid of details that you think are interesting, but maybe just off enough that they become a distraction. So it is a joy, but it's one that you have to temper because you don't want to become indulgent. You still are serving the viewer or reader, and you just have to figure out how to get there, especially in this day and age. When I'm doing TV, whether I'm doing TV or writing a book, I know that I am competing with TikTok and other channels and Instagram. I know that I'm competing for people's attention in a very real way. So that's on my mind when I'm on air and also when I'm writing books.
I have time for one other question, and I would be remiss, since I'm speaking with the resident Philadelphia Eagles fan in Washington, D.C. The Eagles are a shaky 5-2, and Saquon is killing my fantasy team. We're 2-5. As an Eagles fan, are you cautiously optimistic or nervously pessimistic?
Well, I think all Eagles fans are nervously pessimistic because that's just in our DNA. And I'm on a text chat with a bunch of other members of the Philadelphia diaspora, and we sit and watch games together and curse the decisions. And only after we win a game do we allow ourselves to breathe a sigh of relief. But it is a sigh of relief. It is not an end zone dance. And I will not permit myself an end zone dance until the Super Bowl is won. I will say that I was very I felt good about the Phillies too. And then they got eliminated really quick by the Dodgers. Really quick.
That's right. And now the Phillies, they got a lot of decisions to make who they're bringing back. But still, the life of a Philadelphia sports fan, indeed. Well, once again, Jake's new book is Race Against Terror, Chasing an Al-Qaeda Killer at the Dawn of the Forever War. It is published by Simon & Schuster. It is available now. It is quite a read. Jake Tapper, I've enjoyed this. Thanks so much for joining us here on Chatterbinge.
Thank you, Ed Kalegi. He's gonna come alive.
I certainly hope you're right, because he's getting me 8.5 points per week. That ain't gonna cut it. We're 2-5, and we're going nowhere fast. Anywho, Jake's book is quite a read. And it's very interesting to read it because Jake Tapper wrote it, and we're so used to hearing his voice on CNN. So it's very difficult not to read Race Against Terror and not hear Jake reading it to you. It's quite a phenomenon. I'm Ed Kalegi.
This is Chatterbinge
with Ed Kalegi and Karen Richmond.
And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can always catch our best guest conversations and segments right here on the YouTube home of Chatterbinge.